My new work manager is a P-star. I feel like I need to speak about it since I haven't talked about her with anyone. A few months ago, the office got a new manager. When she walked in, I instantly recognized her, but it took me a few hours to realize where from. To keep her anonymous, all I'll say is she's in her early 20s and fairly popular in the adult business, meaning if you watch this kind of material, this individual is almost certain you'll have seen her around. She hasn't retired, as far as I'm aware, but to be an office manager, surely her adult career has taken a backseat. She's super friendly, but also takes a no-nonsense stance and leads the group when necessary. She's nearly a decade younger than me, but she's brilliant. These are some of the cases that I was initially going to describe as unique. This is a really unique circumstance to be in, but as the prevalence of this kind of stuff gets more pervasive and more pervasive, we're going to find this happening all the time. And I'm curious about how this is going to affect the persona around adult work. Now, if you know me, I don't think that there's anything good to come off this. I always like to try and take a kind of a silver lining approach. Like, I was actually thinking the other day, is there any benefit to this stuff being out there, right? Is there actually a benefit? And the only arguments I could come up with are if maybe you had a condition whereby you couldn't attract any woman. And there are people that exist who are out there who purchase the facilities, the services of like escorts and individuals who work in this particular industry for that need, because for whatever reason, and I'm talking this maybe at a kind of disability level, they are unable to attract a partner. And even saying that, there's got to be an antithesis, or not an antithesis, an equal and opposite circumstance in the female sex, meaning there's always going to be out there for somebody, as the the sex is usually split 50-50, right? So even then, you can make another argument against that wouldn't be the case. Or perhaps you were in a sexless marriage. I mean, maybe, but even still, I think there's other opportunities you can do that don't devolve to the level of you having to use these kind of facilities. And the only compelling one I could think of is if your life was in such a bad situation, you were homeless, you were living on the streets, and your life is on the line here, and the only way that you can survive is by selling your body, then that's kind of seen as the lesser of the two evils argument. Those are the only compelling arguments I could come up with. But in the case of young women who, again, have skill, this individual's going into a management position, don't have to devolve to the level of degeneracy, of selling intimacy, of selling the only thing that makes the exclusivity of a relationship strong, the foundation of a relationship strong. Now, the sad reality is this individual has recognized her, and she's going to be shamed for the rest of her life because she's sacrificed her personal brand, her integrity. The internet isn't written in pencil, it's written in ink. I'm sure that's a phrase that you've heard of many, many times, and she's never going to be able to escape the narrative around her being an individual who is selling intimacy, selling a fantasy, and selling herself fundamentally. Look, I think I've made this point before in a previous video, but shame, the emotion of shame is a real thing, right? And I believe it's a very valuable emotion in the sense that it allows individuals to change their behavior as a consequence of that uncomfortable emotion. And you need that emotion. Again, it's a real emotion. It's not an invention. It's not something that's socially created. Shame is an emotion that communicates to you internally that what you're doing is incongruent with some kind of moral principle. And I know we can get into some contentious arguments around that, but shame is valuable in that way. If I didn't have shame about my behavior, if I didn't have shame about me smoking so much, if I didn't have other emotions like fear, like anger, like apathy, I would not be able to correct my behavior. You need negative feedback in order to correct your behavior. And the problem I have with a lot of people who maybe support adult work, or certainly who promote it and who propagate it, are individuals that aren't recognizing that this emotion of shame is there for a reason. You're never going to get away from the fact that man, in his bones, in his DNA, in his nervous system, does not want a promiscuous woman. They do not want it. Ask any man in the world, and 99% of them, again, you're never going to get a complete 180 with this, or a complete full voting for this, is not going to be content with that kind of woman. You're going to get your outliers. You're going to get very, very weird individuals who maybe are a little bit socially inept and mentally unwell or unstable. But by and large, if you're talking about increasing your odds of finding a compassionate reciprocal relationship, you're going to find it in the 99%. You're not going to find it in the 1%. And the way you do that is by being compliant with the emotions that you're experiencing in your body when you're doing things that are incongruent to your sanctity and your purity. In the same way, the story I told you about that business partner who screwed me over, essentially, I experienced, a lot of anger, a lot of, depression, anxiety as a consequence of that. And, I always like to see the positives and things like that. It's definitely made me a better coach in seeing how, what the antithesis is of a terrible coach, and why my coaching is always outcome orientated, meaning I always keep my word. I always sit down before I talk with my clients and establish what does their life or our lives look like after our time together. And if they haven't met that, then they don't pay. That's the way I have always worked, but I'm even more clear on now, because there are individuals out there who read one or two of Alex Hormozy's book, watch one video and go, I'm going to start making people ridiculous offers that I can't fulfill just so I can get the sale. And then when they ask for their money back, I'm gonna run out of there. And karma is a real thing. Karma works in mysterious ways, and it's gonna come back to bite that person on the bottom in ways that they maybe aren't conscious of. Well, they aren't conscious of it because they never kept their word. It's going to show up in their marriage. It's going to show up in their relationships. It's going to show up in their future business. It's going to show up, and the universe has a universal memory in these things, and it never forgets. And those aren't theories; those are facts. Speak soon.